welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate. Your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward. With our man right in the middle, it's Barry Saywitz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there. I am Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company. It is Tuesday morning. We are back. We are talking more real estate, and I'm excited about today's show. But before we get going, I do want to do a shout out. It's raining here in Southern California, so for everybody that's out there on the road, be careful. We know how people don't know how to drive in the rain here in Southern California. And sunshine will be back hopefully tomorrow. So with all of that said, I want to welcome our guest, Tustin Lumbard, mayor of the city of Tustin, attorney extraordinaire, father of 5. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Barry. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so appreciate you coming on. We've been trying to get you on for a while, and so I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us. I want to go back. I want to start talking about your history and you're a longtime resident of Tustin, longtime involved with the city. But let's rewind and go back. You went to school at Cal Poly and then ultimately decided to go to the Midwest for law school. I guess why law and then why go to the Midwest?
Yeah, so just going back to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, I really enjoyed my time there. I don't think I'd get into that school now. Everything's so competitive in the state. Kind of joke that I snuck in the back door, but after graduating from undergraduate, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, as all young people do. And the law seemed to be a very useful profession for a number of reasons. I thought I wanted to be a prosecutor, ended up going into business. But understanding the law in our markets today, especially in California, where everything is litigious,
yes,
everything is driven by a statute or a code. Having that background, that education, I thought was going to be very helpful in my career.
Yeah, no question. And so you go to Indiana University for law school, Hoosiers, from the Midwest as well. And then why come back to California?
So I did not plan to go to Indiana. When I was applying to law school, I applied to schools in the state of California and Washington, D.C. I was starting to get interested in politics. I thought I might end up in D.C. at some point. I got a fee waiver postcard in the mail from Indiana University. Applied to our school for free, right? Which is like saving $40. But when you're applying to law school and you're scrounging dollars,
like, hey, whatever.
That matters, right? So I sent it in. I got a letter back accepting my application and a scholarship offer. And so I flew out to the school to check it out. It wasn't on my radar. It wasn't somewhere I was planning to go. You mentioned the Hoosiers. All I really knew about IU was Bobby Knight throwing chairs on the basketball court, right?
Right.
So I went out there, real traditional, old-fashioned school that was very different than the schools in California. And I decided that I wanted to challenge myself and leave the state that I had grown up in and experience a different place for a few years. And I'm really glad that I did.
Yeah. No, I love the Midwest. Yeah. And so the only issue is in the wintertime you have to live there.
Yeah.
And the weather's not as nice as it is here.
There was a day in 2009, I left John Wayne Airport. It was 87 degrees. And I landed in Indianapolis, and it was negative 17.
Yeah.
And that was a shock to my system, my emotions, everything. But the winters are harsh there.
Yeah, and when you live in California long enough, you get thin blood, and so you feel it that much more.
Absolutely.
No question. So, and to those folks out there in the Midwest, we're sorry. I think it's really cold there.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
So you come back to California for many reasons, and then why Tustin?
So when my wife and I got married, we lived in Irvine. We had one child, and we lived in a small 2-bedroom place. We have 5 kids now. And so as our family was growing, my wife actually visited some model homes on what's called the Tustin Legacy, which is the former Marine Corps Air Station of Tustin, where the blimp hangars are. And I didn't know that we were moving, but she did. And she said, hey, let's go look at these models. And we made an offer and got accepted, and we bought a home there. Had a couple kids, outgrew that home, bought another one on the base. So it was just, it was close enough to where she grew up, and really an exciting area to buy a home in at the time.
Well, and at the time, there wasn't nearly as much there, certainly, as there is today. It was sort of like, hey, here's a new thing. And even then, it was sort of on the outskirts, right? You weren't in the thick of it, even though it was 5 minutes away.
Yeah, and at the time you had, so the Marine Corps Air Station, former Marine Corps Air Station, was 1,600 acres that the city took over when the base closed in 1999. And when we bought our home in 2011, you basically had 2 neighborhoods on the north end, 2 hangars in the middle of the property, and then the district shopping center had just opened up on the south side. Everything else was vacant, right? So it's kind of getting in on that front in that first step of the development out there that we thought was interesting. And a lot's happened since then. You know, I've been involved with the city and trying to get things moving, but we still have a lot of work to do out there.
Yeah, and that whole development for the base is really a 25-year project unless they accelerate it and get it done sooner.
Well, I say it should have been 25 years. We're already there. That was one of my main issues when running for office was, hey, we should be doing this better. We should be doing this faster. Each legislative session that goes by, Sacramento takes power away from cities. And so if we want to control our destiny, we need to go a little quicker here. And we've got some things moving with the council and the staff that we have in place at the city. We have a lot of exciting projects coming up.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of growth in that part of town, and there's certainly the demand for it.
Yeah, every time we put a housing project online, it's oversubscribed. So
Right.
we had a 400-unit neighborhood built by Brookfield, and there was a 2,000 person waiting list.
Crazy.
Right. So a lot of people question whether the demand is there. We've seen that it's quite the opposite. There's over demand.
Right, and then once those people come, you have all the retail support that goes with it.
Absolutely, and that's an important part of what we're doing out on the base is not just putting housing there. We're developing retail and commercial and office spaces that are going to really make a special community. We're not just trying to stick a bunch of neighborhoods, out without the amenities to support it.
Yeah, and even the ancillary stuff like childcare and some of these other businesses that are a byproduct of having a bunch of people in a concentrated area.
That, and it's a little chicken and the egg too. So we have the Flight Office Complex, which is on Barranca and Red Hill,
Right.
and we have a lot of C-suites coming in from LA County. Through COVID and other issues, they don't want to be in LA anymore, and a lot of those people live in Newport Beach or what have you. They wanted an office in Orange County, so then we bring them in, and we have these sort of white collar jobs and good paying jobs for college graduates, and they say where are we going to live?
Right.
We need more housing. So it's both. You bring the people there, you need amenities, or you bring the workers there and they need housing, right?
Yeah.
So we've got both.
And
both
that's
sides.
and that's been a common theme for a lot of the cities that we've talked to in Orange County is that the people have to be able to afford to live in Orange County. Otherwise, they're winding up commuting, and then you got to either pay them more, or it's further, or they look for a job closer to home, or they want to work from home.
Yeah, and I kind of frame this discussion when talking with longtime residents who don't want change. They don't want new projects. I say, well, where are your kids going to live? Do you want them to have to live in a different state? Do you want them to have to live in a different city? You're not going to see them as much. Can we support providing more housing so that you can stay close to your family? And I think most people do want that. They just want it to be done in a balanced way that really makes sense for the community.
Yeah. So let's. I want to rewind a little bit. Let's go back. So why politics, right? So you're in Tustin, you're building a family, and then one day is there an epiphany that says, "Hey, you know what? I want to get into politics."
So, no, there wasn't. We moved into our home, and as I said, there was really nothing going on the base, right? Just a vacuum of vacant space, and I had questions. And being the perhaps naive or ambitious person that I was, I called the mayor at the time, and I said, "Hey, I've got some ideas, or I've got some questions as well. Can you give me some answers?" And he said, and I tease with him now, but he kind of hooked me in. He said, "Why don't you apply for a position on our planning commission?"
Right. Those are good ideas. Why don't you get involved?
Yeah, why don't you help out, right? So I said, okay, I'll apply for this. And there are 26 applicants, 3 spots. I got selected by the council at the time to be on the planning commission. Served 5 years there. The sort of next natural step is to serve on city council if you want to continue to shape your community. So it wasn't like I set out saying, hey, I want to be the mayor of Tustin. But I did know that I wanted to help our community, and this is kind of the path that was charted just by happenstance and opportunity.
So on the city council for Tustin, is it an election for the mayor, or is it appointed by the other city council members?
It's an election now, and that started in 2022. So it used to be, as many cities in Orange County are, it was 5 at-large council members.
Right.
So that everybody in the city votes for everybody on council. There's a state law that requires cities to move to district elections if their city council does not look like their community does ethnically. In Tustin, we have 40% of our residents are Latino or Latina, and we had 1 council member out of 5 that was a Latino woman. So 20%, 40%, that doesn't match.
So it's too low.
Under the law, we had to go to districts to try to meet parity of representation under the state law. When we were looking at moving to districts, if you're familiar with Tustin, the way it's sort of set up geographically, it's very difficult to carve it into 5 equal districts. We have 4 distinct neighborhoods, and so we decided to do 4 districts and an at-large mayor. So now everybody in Tustin votes for their district representative, and everybody gets to vote for the mayor as well
In the city.
in the city. So I was the last mayor appointed under the old system. They were 1-year terms. You kind of rotate among the council members, and the first mayor elected under the new system.
And so is it still a 1-year term? Or is
It's
it?
a 4-year term. So you get
Okay.
elected to a 4-year term. I served through 2026.
So now you're stuck.
Now, yeah.
For better or worse.
Yeah, Tustin stuck with me for better or worse. so,
Right.
yeah.
And so there are really a lot of, I mean, people don't know the history of Tustin. And I did a little bit of homework. I mean, there was a guy named Tustin,
Columbus Tustin.
and he was a carriage maker. And he bought this parcel of land from Santa Ana back in the 1880s. And they started a town of a few hundred people. And they were vying for the end point of the railroad. And they were bidding against the city of Santa Ana.
Right.
And ultimately he lost, and it was a big disappointment for him, because then the city of Santa Ana became the county seat and flourished much more rapidly than the city of Tustin, and the city of Tustin became more of a bedroom community.
That's right. And interestingly, Columbus Tustin came from Northern California, bought the property. He said to residents, now, future residents, if you come to town, I will give you the land for free. You just need to build a home and stay here.
Yeah.
So he's trying to build a city. And our historic Old Town is really where the city started. It was a 1 square mile town. El Camino Real runs right through the middle of it. So El Camino Real in Maine, in our Old Town, is where the carriages used to ride through. We've got some old historic homes there that are really beautiful in old buildings. But yeah, there was a competition over the rail spur. Columbus Tustin lost. He died an angry man. We've got a bust of him in Old Town. He doesn't look very happy. We tried to put a smile on his face, but I think the end of the story was less pleasant than the beginning.
Yeah, and I think his goal, I think he'd be proud today, because ultimately the city flourished at the end of the day. And who knew? I mean, if you offered somebody that deal with land for free today, think of the line you'd have out the door, basically be everybody.
Yeah.
And so who knew then, right? And also the city of Tustin, for those who don't know, was really known as the city of trees.
Yes.
Right, even though there's very few trees and you have to plant more.
Yeah.
But it was all trees and agricultural land at the time.
Right. So the City of Trees moniker is something that we get through a National Arbor Day Foundation, and actually Arbor Day is tomorrow. We're supposed to be planting a tree, but I think it might be raining. But directly after Columbus Tustin started the city, right after the Civil War, it was largely agriculture. So you had citrus and avocado and surrounding the old town. As we fast forward, we had World War II, and the property, which is now the former Marine Corps station at Tustin, was purchased by the Navy from one of those landowners, and that really changed the dynamic in town, because you had Marines coming in by train to serve in World War II, and we had blimps stationed there to patrol the Pacific coast for enemy submarines. And then after that, we had Vietnam and Desert Storm. We had helicopters there. So it was agriculture in its roots. It was military in the middle of the 20th century. And I think that really actually makes the city very special and unique in Orange County, is our heritage, right?
Yeah.
We still have a lot of those families that live here, either Marines who stayed after their service was done, or landowners, farming families who have generations who now live in Tustin.
Yeah, and then people that are coming today in the new generation, it's just Orange County and it's an urban environment, and I'm looking for a place to live and work.
That's right. And comparing to Santa Ana and Tustin, one of the things that's unique about Tustin is we're a small town. We're 80,000 people, but we pride ourselves on our charm. I call us the Mayberry of Orange County. You really do run into your neighbors on the sports fields or the grocery store, and I think it's the reason that a lot of people choose to live in Tustin is they don't want to live in a big city. Although we are moving towards urbanization of the county, we still keep our core principles of keeping that small town charm at the forefront.
And look, the growth of Orange County as a whole, and the value of real estate and the housing prices in some of the surrounding cities, albeit Newport Beach or in Irvine, does nothing, I think, but help the desire and the demand for the city of Tustin, who's right next door.
No doubt, no doubt. When I grew up in Orange County, so I used to come from South County. I lived in Mission Viejo at the time as a small child, come to visit my grandparents in Irvine, and it used to be
It's like a day trip then, right?
Citrus grows. I was
Right.
looking out the window. There's nothing to see except for farmland, strawberry fields and lemons and oranges. The county's changed drastically in the last 30 years, and I think we're going to see more of that. We're going to see more people, more housing. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think there's a lot of good reasons that people want to live in Orange County, and Tustin's not unique among that. We have got a lot of positive things going our way.
Yeah, and let's fast forward into today's world. What are some of the challenges that you're dealing with on the city council and as the mayor going forward? I mean, housing certainly got to be top of the list. Safety, homeless, transportation, all those things.
Yeah, so my number one priority as mayor is public safety. That's a broad topic, but keeping our residents safe should be the number one objective of a municipal government. That includes addressing homelessness, which has been a big problem in our state. And a lot of folks think that cities or counties can solve the homelessness issue. I just think that's not true. We have state policies and programs that invite people to our state, and they get
Free
a
stuff.
lot of benefits for being here, right? And so we deal with that at the local level. When you see a homeless person or family, a lot of residents come to the city and say, what are you going to do about this? The issue is so much more complex than that. But in Tustin, we do have our own temporary homeless shelter. We have 57 beds. We pay for it on our own. We don't partner with any other city. It's been a very successful model. We have behavioral health unit at Tustin PD. We have our own police department who responds to some of these mental health crises with a PhD instead of a weapon, because we see de-escalation helps a lot of times. So we're trying. On the housing front, of course, which overlaps some of the homelessness issues, we need more housing in the state, just given the direction we're headed, and in the county. We're under-housed in the county. We have people driving in from Riverside, from LA to come to work here, and I think a lot of people have to leave because they can't afford housing, they can't find housing, right? So in Tustin, we're really leaning into developing housing in a smart way. We're not just going to throw a real dense 6-story building in the middle of our old town, but we do have the Tustin legacy, the Marine base, and some of those projects do fit out there and are appropriate. So we've in the last few years, as I've been mayor and as our city council has come along, we've hired some new staff, new city manager, new deputy city manager. We're really leaning into moving housing projects now, because as I mentioned, we're losing control every time they meet in Sacramento, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Well, there's a couple of things going on. I mean, what's interesting about the city of Tustin, I find, is you're one of the few cities that really does have land to be able to build new product. Whereas if you go to a city that's already, for the most part, developed, look at Santa Ana right next door, the way that those housing projects are getting developed is you really have to knock something down for the most part in order to build something new. And then you've got something new next to a bunch of stuff that's older. Whereas at the Legacy, it's really mostly new stuff, and you can add to a master plan project. And to some degree, I'm going to guess, you get to pick and choose how that will look at the end of the day, and how the city winds up growing. And like you said, I mean, we've had plenty of other mayors in here. The challenge is with what comes down from Sacramento trying to dictate what I build in my city.
right. And we do have the Tustin Legacy site, and that's exciting, and it could be a very positive thing. The challenge there is that often we're looked at from the state is, hey, you've got 1,000 vacant acres. Why don't you handle this housing crisis?
Right. Why don't you just build a bunch of housing?
And that's not what's right for our community, right? And we also have an agreement with the Navy. When we got the property, we have to have a certain balance of housing and commercial and office. But yeah, that's a very exciting project, and we are building a small city out there, really, a small community. However, as the mayor of the entire city, we can't lose sight of other parts in town. And there are shopping centers that have vacancies, right? And we have blight in town. So we do have some strategic areas where we're looking to bring in some new projects, whether it be new office or residential where there was formerly office. I think you're going to see it balanced throughout the city.
And you were mentioning to me before we got on the air that some of these projects that you're now starting to see under construction have really been in the works for a couple of years.
Yeah.
This is not something that somebody just thought of 6 months ago and all of a sudden they're building.
Yeah, one of the most frustrating things about government is how slow it moves, especially if you come from private industry like I do. But if you're seeing a project being constructed vertically right now, that's been in the works for at least 3 or 4 years, from the pre-planning and application stage to the entitlement from the city and the approvals and the permits. It takes a long time.
And what are the developers that come to the city that want to build these projects? What are they saying about, number one, the demand, and then number two, just the ability to build these projects with the economy the way it is, with financing and interest rates the way they are? It's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, so every developer that comes to town, we get a lot. From your startup developer want to do a 2-unit project, or Irvine Company who just got approved for a 1,300-unit apartment project on the base. They all see the demand. There's just the demand's not going away anytime soon. There are challenges in financing. Construction costs are incredibly difficult right now, right? So there's price point constraints that tend to lean right now currently towards apartments and rental and commercial operations, not for sale product. That said, we don't want to just throw a bunch of apartments in town. We need a balance, right? The community generally
And different price points too, I'm going to guess.
likes ownership, right? And you also don't want just small units, as you mentioned, Barry. Single family neighborhoods are hard to come by these days in Orange County. And so if we can build a couple more of those, and we've seen this, they get scooped up real fast.
Yeah. And on the apartment side, there's still plenty of demand. You have all the younger folks who really don't have the burning desire to want to own something. They just want a nice place to live and want amenities around them that they can get to easily.
Yeah, and I don't think apartments are a bad thing. Yes, younger folks that want a lower price point. I think you also have working professionals that don't want to have to take care of a yard. They don't want to deal with it. They'd rather pay an HOA and have a gym downstairs, and they want to be able to leave and travel and not worry about it, right? So I think we're seeing a little bit of a shift where Orange County was historically very single-family resident, small suburban neighborhoods. We are going through an urbanization period here in town, but like I said, it doesn't have to be all bad. We just got to be mindful of the way we do it.
And I know you've been involved with the Transportation Authority in Orange County, and so transportation always an issue. The more people who come, the more cars on the road, and it's a question of trying to balance that as well.
That's right. In a city like Tustin, where we're landlocked, we're not growing geographically. We're kind of stuck with the infrastructure we have. There are ways that you can plan for the future by providing ample space for expansion of the roads that you have. Right, you can widen them, add lanes, but it's a big challenge. I've read studies for years about how people are going to be getting out of cars and using regional transit and all that. I haven't really seen that yet.
No.
I mean, everybody still owns at least one vehicle.
No, I think the only thing we got going for us is a lot of people work from home, so they don't get in the car every day and go to work.
Right,
So the rush hour peak is not as bad as it would be if everybody was still going to work.
That's right. Or if it rains like this morning, people
Yes.
tend to be afraid of the rain. But yeah, Tustin does have a train station. We have adjacent to the legacy, and I think as you look 30, 40, 50 years into the future, you could see a more regional mobility benefit there, but it's not right now. And that's one of the biggest things that we hear about is traffic, right? Because it affects people's everyday lives. If it's taken 10 more minutes for them to get home to their kids, and you can help alleviate that, that should be a priority, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, you have employees that will move 10 minutes closer to work or take a new job because it's closer to home.
Right.
It's just a simple fact.
absolutely. So it's at the forefront of what we're considering.
And in terms of some of the challenges, I mean, beautification, I know, is a big deal for a lot of the cities in Orange County, whether it's streets, whether it's drought-tolerant plantings, whether it's trees. Is there also a push that certainly as the new product gets developed, that's a requirement to make it look nice around it, but is there a push at the city council side to go back to some of these other existing neighborhoods and parts of the town and spruce them up, if you will?
They are. So we are fortunate to have a rotating paving program in the city that we've had in place for a long time. And through prudent fiscal management over decades, we have the revenue to be able to pay for new paving. You hear about certain cities in the county who can't pave their streets, and there's potholes, and their city infrastructure is literally crumbling under their feet. So we do have a very proactive paving program, and we just went through a process of either installing or redoing medians and landscaping them throughout town. We've also revitalized about 6 of our parks in the last 3 years, got new playground equipment, new turf, planted new trees. It's important. I mean, those are the amenities that people enjoy and that they need when you're talking about roads. So keeping your city nice. I go back to the broken windows theory, right? If you let something crack and you don't address it, then it's going to get a lot worse, right? So we need to keep our city beautiful and clean and safe.
Well, not only for the people who live there currently and use it every day, but for the future, if you're trying to attract more people, then that's the first thing people see, I think.
Yeah, and I should mention, for what it's worth, Fortune magazine a couple years ago ranked Tustin the #1 city in the state of California to live for families. And they went through a list of metrics. It's proximity to jobs, proximity to education, hospitals, price points for housing, amenities. We were the #1 city in the state of California, and a lot of that has to do with exactly what we're talking about. We're not letting our city crumble, and we're doing things in a mindful way.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly, and it shows at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about higher level sort of economics, because there's a lot of things going on in the world that are a trickle down to not only California and then Orange County and then down to each individual person. And I don't know that there's really any way to control it, but are there certain things that you're watching on the greater economy scale, whether it's the fact that people now are starting to talk that we may be able to, or maybe going into a recession, or interest rates not really going down? How do some of those things affect your world and everybody in it?
So when you talk about a recession, cities operate based on revenue. We need dollars to pay for the police officers that are going to keep you safe, right? So Tustin has the Tustin Auto Center. We need people to be buying cars to keep our revenue levels at the level that they're at. So when you go into a recession and those large purchases slow down or stop happening, that impacts the city's budget. It ends up flowing downstream to the services that our residents receive.
Yeah, no, whether it's restaurants or service centers or
Absolutely.
Right, it's all of the above.
If you're not going out to eat on a Friday night with your family because you're worried about your 401k, that impacts the city. You may not see it immediately, but there is a trailing impact to the revenue that the city receives. When you talk about interest rates, we need people to be buying homes. We need people to be selling homes. We need those transactions. The property tax rolls increase, the values increase when you sell a home, and the tax basis increases. And when that's not happening, people are hunkering down because they can't afford to take out debt to buy a new home. That also impacts the city. And property taxes are a smaller portion compared to sales tax, but all of that matters. And I don't think people always think about that. They ask, why haven't we hired more cops? And we have in Tustin, thankfully. We actually have hired more police officers. But why aren't we? Why are these services struggling? Well, we don't have the dollars based on your activity or visitors' activities in town.
Right. Well, then you don't have the transaction volume, right? In the real estate world, the people who have low mortgage interest rates on their mortgage are not selling because if they had to buy something else, it cost them more.
Absolutely.
And so what used to happen is I would just remodel, right? And so I'd redo the kitchen or I'd redo the bathroom, and I would go do that. But now with construction costs as high as they are, that has slowed down. And so you just have people in this wait and see mode, I think.
Yep.
And so you don't have the seller selling, and then the buyer sitting on the fence was, I think, sitting on the fence going, if interest rates go down, then I'll get in the game. And then they're not coming down, and now the promise of them coming down anytime soon seems to be getting, the goal line is getting pushed further and further away. And so you just don't have the transactions going on.
Right. And, the cost of construction materials is up, and the cost of labor across all markets is up. That impacts cities as well. We have a real hard time right now hiring dispatchers at Tustin PD. I sit on the board of Orange County Fire Authority. Same thing. We can't hire good qualified dispatchers who's a vital role in emergency services because they can make more money doing something else.
Right.
And the public salaries need to keep, in a certain sense, need to keep pace with private industry in order to be attracting and retaining talent. It goes with police personnel as well. If I can make more money doing something in private security than being a cop, I might consider it for my family's sake, right? So increasing costs across the board really have an impact at the local level. Despite us not necessarily being able to control them, we are certainly impacted by them.
Yeah, no question. And so I guess it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward and then how that trickles down to the average person. I guess for the rest of the year, we'll see what Trump does and we'll see what the impact is, and everybody's watching.
Yeah, I think we're in a day-to-day or perhaps hour-by-hour news cycle right now, and I cannot predict what's going to happen by the end of today. It's a volatile time. Whether you voted for Trump or not, I think we have not seen times like this in recent memory.
Nor have I think we've seen the end of it. It's going to be
No
a
doubt.
bumpy roller coaster for the short term, at least anyway.
No doubt.
And so in terms of your view of Orange County on the bigger picture, long term, good place to live, good place to invest, good place to buy, work?
Yes, across the board. I think Orange County is the best place to live in the state. My family, we have 5 children. We decided to raise our family here. We could have left. I mean, a lot of people do leave, and I don't blame them for it, but we're in it for the long haul. I think the state's gonna come back. I think the pendulum will swing back in a more sane direction. But as far as Tustin specifically is concerned, we are, despite instability at the national or perhaps global level, we are a stable city. We've got a lot of positive programs in place right now that are going to keep us on a steady march down the road here. So.
And so I want to talk about the fires only because it just happened and it's recent. It's on the forefront. It was on the forefront until other things took precedent. But have you seen migration from folks in LA going, look, I've had enough, or temporarily I'm getting out of the fire zone, or I'm displaced and I've got to go someplace else? I talk to people all the time. They go, oh, you own a real estate company. You should have all kinds of activity from people coming out of LA. And I mean, on one hand, some of that's true, but on the greater side of it, we haven't seen it on our end.
I'm aware of stories. I think some Palisades families moved to Newport Harbor, or Newport Mesa Unified had metrics on how many new families they received in a couple weeks, and it was a lot. We haven't really seen as much of that in Tustin, to your point.
Yeah, and then I think the byproduct of the fires in LA is, even in my own homeowners association, we had complaints from homeowners saying, well, we should do more in terms of the landscaping and fire plan and reactionary, so that we don't ever get in the same kind of pickle that these folks were in. Do you see that sort of knee-jerk reaction to what's going on, and is it needed?
So yes, there was that knee-jerk reaction. I think I don't blame them. Our residents want to make sure that they're safe, right? Tustin is a contract city with Orange County Fire Authority for fire service, probably the best fire agency in the state, if not the country. We immediately after the fire started, we had them confirm that our hydrants would work if we turned them on, right? And of course they would, because
Right.
we do things a little different in Orange County than they do in LA. But we are taking a close look at some of our open space borders. So in our Tustin Ranch neighborhoods on the northeast, we've got open land that is adjacent to homes, and making sure that we've properly planned for emergency management in case there is a fire. And we have. And
Yeah.
we put that information out. But, I think the residents were right to ask those questions.
I mean, I've seen it just, I noticed, like, I go for a drive in Santiago Canyon, and you see people with yellow jackets standing outside their car on the weekends, looking for somebody who might be looking to set a fire. Or you look at, all of a sudden there's new fences that went up in open areas, so nobody could just walk into there and try and set a fire. It's crazy that you have to do that.
It's sad, frankly, that we have to protect against folks with crazy motives, but that's the world we live in today.
Yeah, no question. So, in terms of, if people want to find out more information about the city of Tustin, or what's going on, or the city council, what's the website that they can go to?
TustinCA.org. So TustinCA.org. You can find out more about what the city council's doing, current projects, more about the base and what that's going to look like in the future. But TustinCA.org.
Yeah, and then my final question was, what is going to happen with the hangar at the base, and is there a definitive plan? I know there's all kinds of talk about different options for the hangar itself at the end of the day, stay or go, museum, or,
Right.
Bungee jumping, or whatever the case is. Is there a definitive plan for it at this point?
We're working through plans with the Navy. So what folks don't often realize is the Navy owns both the north and the south hangar. The city has a lease to the south hangar, and we will eventually take it over. But so the north hangar had the fire, 14 months ago now. Discussions have changed a bit since that fire. That hangar's not going to stay because it's not there any longer, right? So we're most likely going to be left with an imprint of where the hangar was once the Navy leaves. The south hangar is a little bit more interesting. Now that the north hangar has burned, there's two schools of thought. One is, let's protect it even more. We've only got one left. It's special. Let's keep it. Second school of thought is, we just saw the north hangar burn, and it was an over $100 million liability so far on the Navy's behalf, just for the cleanup. Should the city be carrying that sort of liability on its books with the south hangar? And I think the answer is no. And so if we can bring a private entity in to revitalize it, bring it up to commercial standards, and keep it safe, that's a discussion we're willing to have. We haven't found a whole lot of folks that have that kind of money that want to keep the hangar. So
Right, and maybe down the road, after the rest of the stuff around it gets developed, then there won't be as many other options to take a look at. But it seems like the hangar might not be the highest and best use at the end of the day, long term.
I mean, the reason you want to keep it is because it's
history.
It's a tremendous structure. It's a monument to our military history in Orange County and Southern California and Tustin. But when you share dollars, financial information
Right,
with
from a
residents,
business standpoint, that
most
makes
people just shake their head and say, take it down.
Forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Well, look, Paul's waving at me. He wants to go get breakfast. And so, as I mentioned, it always goes much quicker than we thought. But I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your thoughts and talking about the city, and wish you and your family and the city council and the city of Tustin all the best going forward in the coming year.
Thanks, Barry.
And thanks for coming on and talking with us this morning. Austin Lumbard, City of Tustin Mayor. For those of you out there, I am Barry Saywitz again. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Thanks to everybody here at OC Talk Radio for making it happen. We'll see you back here next week on Let's Talk Real Estate.
Well, there you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California, Irvine.